Now, just a day after the massive United Nations climate conference wrapped up in Azerbaijan, delegates from 175 countries have now gathered in South Korea to hash out a treaty on global plastic pollution. As the event kicked off today, familiar divisions have arisen, suggesting that deal-making is going to be a difficult task. Countries that bear the brunt of plastic pollution are struggling to reach agreement with petrochemical-producing nations like China and Saudi Arabia. Now, the amount of plastic waste produced globally has been climbing sharply, and if it's left unchecked, scientists say it could double or even triple over the next decades. Right now, it is thought more than 52 million tonnes enter the environment each and every year. India is the most plastic-polluted country in the world, with 9.3 million tonnes being released annually. It's followed by Nigeria with 3.5 million tonnes, then Indonesia with just over 3 million, closely followed by China and Pakistan. So it's a problem that needs urgent attention. Here's what's being said as those talks get underway in South Korea.
This conference is about far more than drafting an international treaty. It is about humanity racing to meet an existential challenge.
This is your chance to craft an agreement for the ages, one that could deliver 1,000 of years free from plastic, one that at the end of this week, the gavel must come down.
Differences in views still remain on key issues, including plastic production, controllable plastic products and chemicals.
The decisions made here will determine whether we confront the plastics crisis with the ambition it demands or allow the fossil fuel and petrochemical interests to derail progress. A weak treaty is a failed treaty.
For more on this, we can bring in Giulia Carlini. She's a senior attorney with the Environmental Health Programme at the Centre for International Environmental Law. She's joining us now from Geneva. Giulia, welcome. We have been talking about global plastic pollution for a long time. How bad is this problem?
Thank you so much for the invitation. And the problem, as you showed, it's big, it's huge, and it's growing. As you said, the estimates are that plastic production could triple by 2050 if no action is taken. And I've seen that you show the statistics about plastic waste, but that is really just the end of the life cycle. And I'd like us to think about upstream, who is producing plastic and who's profiting from it. And for decades, the plastic industry spent millions in campaigning and advertisements, making us think that we could just recycle plastic waste, even if they knew that it was a myth. And in fact, if we look at the current crisis, if no action is taken, it will get worse, not just in the environment, which is the most visible part of plastic pollution, but also for human health. Scientists have been finding microplastics in our bodies, in all the major organs they're looking at. The latest findings are that micro nanoplastics have been found in our lungs, in our blood, and in our brains. And so we should not look just downstream at the waste, but really upstream to tackle these both environmental and health crisis, to really stop it at the source, turning off the tap of plastic production.
So obviously a real sense of urgency, but a world treaty to curb plastic waste sounds ambitious. What are the prospects of actually getting a deal done, and how enforceable would an international treaty be?
The stakes are high, and indeed it's not an easy job. And that's because of the economic and vested interests that there are behind. As you mentioned, and I was showed in the video, there are links between the plastic industry and the fossil fuel industry, because 99% of plastic originates from fossil fuels, from oil and gas. We can learn from previous agreements, like the Paris Agreement on climate, and we know what we need for a plastics treaty to be effective. We need legally binding obligations from states, not just voluntary measures. And we need, from a procedural point of view, governance that doesn't allow just a veto power by one or a few countries with vested interests that want to derail progress, but potentially a possibility to vote in this future treaty to continue and to move into the implementation. And just 3 key examples of obligations that would be needed to make it implementable are a cap on plastic production, a ban on the toxic chemicals that are used in plastic and affect our health, and a financial mechanism, so money to make sure it is implemented once into force.
There's also a huge plastic waste problem in our oceans. How do you get nations to work together to clean that up when it's not in their national waters anymore?
That is just the end of the cycle, and it is indeed a problem. But if we just focus on cleanups, we will get more and more this vicious circle of cleaning up and having new plastic waste in the environment. That is why it's crucial to act upstream and to regulate, to cap, to reduce the production of plastic. Otherwise, it would be simply impossible to manage the plastic in the environment. It's already impossible right now, and the situation will just get worse with this plastic production that will keep growing according to the estimates if no action is taken.
Just briefly, Giulia, why are governments so reluctant to act on single-use plastics, plastic packaging? I mean, people are adaptable, aren't they? I mean, surely they could get used to alternatives.
Yes, people are adaptable, and I wouldn't blame consumers for their choices where sometimes they do not even have the choice. The issue is an overproduction of plastic. And again, we go back to who's producing plastic and who's the source, who's profiting. And we have fossil fuel companies who are extracting oil and gas and producing plastic and profiting from it. So we have the same actors that are hampering progress in the climate spaces that are also coming to the plastics treaty negotiations. In fact, earlier this year, at the previous round of negotiation, we saw a 40% increase almost of fossil fuel and climate industry lobbyists coming to this negotiation compared to the previous session. We still need to
Giulia Carlini, I'm so sorry. I'm going to have to interrupt
negotiation this week.
I'm going to have to interrupt you, Giulia, because we're out of time. But thank you so much, Giulia Carlini from the Centre for International Environmental Law.